Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, April the 2nd, 2024. It is currently 2:31 p.m. Central Time, and I am coming to you live from the Theology Central studio, located right here in Abilene, Texas, where right outside this window behind me right now, if you were to see my yard, it looks amazing. The yard guys just showed up. They came, everything. The grass is cut. Everything looks good. Everything. It looks awesome. It looks great. Hopefully it looks great because we have to pay for that to be done, obviously. So it looks really good. So with a fresh cut lawn in front of the studio lights are on. I'm here in front of the microphone, and well, we have something to talk about. We have something very interesting to talk about. Now, I am not 100% convinced exactly which direction I should take this, but what I wanted to do is I started having some initial thoughts, so I just want to turn on the microphone and kind of once again present something to you. And then hopefully you'll take it and you'll do some work and you'll do some study. Now, this all started with the Sword of the Lord newspaper. Remember, I told everyone to get a subscription to the Sword of the Lord newspaper. I did that last summer, right? Remember? I told everyone, right? Well, the Sword of the Lord newspaper, this is the March the 1st, 2024 issue of the Sword of the Lord newspaper. And inside this newspaper, there was an article entitled The Flea Market. The flea market, spelled F-L-E-E, the flea market. So obviously it's a play on words, like, a flea market where you would go, somewhere, it's outdoors, it's a market, you buy secondhand goods, a flea market. Well, obviously it's a play on words. Instead of the flea market like that, they F-L-E-E, flea, right? And this is what they said. The idea to flee means to run, to shun, to avoid, to move, go, and don't look back. The idea to flee means to run, to shun, to avoid, to move, to go, and don't look back. And this article says that the Bible contains a vast flea market, F-L-E-E, because the Bible has over 100 verses that uses the word flee. Over 100. So for the Sermons 2.0 app challenge this week, I made it very simple. I'll give you a couple of things to do. The first thing I wanted you to do is I want you to find at least at a minimum, 100 verses that uses the word flee and then kind of put them in different categories. Flee what? Flee to, flee from, however, you can develop the categories any way you want. And then after you've found all the verses, read all the verses, put them in a specific category, then write out kind of like a brief paragraph of what you learned from your visit to and I know it's somewhat cheesy, the Bible flea market, looking at all of those verses about flee, to flee, fleeing, fled, whatever tense you want to look at. And so that's the first thing I told you to do. And then you were supposed to grab the Sermons 2.0 app, and you're supposed to be listening to random sermons about fleeing or to flee or flee. And there are plenty on there. Again, you can use all the different tenses. Now you're looking up all the verses, right? So you can also look up sermons on that verse that has the word flee in it and see how they decide to handle the text. So there's lots of different ways you can look up the sermons. You can just look up the sermons by the word flee or fleeing or fled, or you can say, I've got 100 verses here. Here's a verse that uses the word flee. I'm going to look up random sermons on that particular verse. That's something else you can do. So hopefully you've been working. Hopefully you've been busy, and hopefully it's been beneficial. So for me, I started, again, if I give you the assignment, I try to do the exact same assignment. I started working on the assignment. Now, I haven't listened to a random sermon yet, but I've been working on trying to find the 100 verses. And so I grabbed the Blue Letter Bible app. I have it right here. And I went to search. And I typed in the word flee, F-L-E-E, and I hit search. And I made sure the search range was for the whole Bible. And guess where I ended up? You probably found it as well if you did a search. The very first verse that shows up in the Blue Letter Bible app for searching for the word flee, as found in the King James Version of the Bible. It occurs 101 times in the King James Bible, 101 times in the King James Bible. The first place you end up is Genesis chapter 16, verse 8. Genesis chapter 16, verse 8. And if I'm being honest with you, I kind of looked at the verse, Genesis chapter 16, verse 8. I read these words, and he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress, Sarai. And I'm like, okay. All right. That's kind of one of those historical narratives. Here's Hagar. She's running from Sarai. Okay. All right. Next, just move. Let me find a good one. Let me find one that I can really do something with. And so then I started looking, and then I stopped. I'm like, what are you doing? That's the very thing you shouldn't do. If you find one and you don't really know what to do with it, stop and spend some time there until you figure out what you should do with it. And so I was like, okay, come on, you can do better than that. Think. All right, so then I'm like, okay, Genesis 16:8. Okay, so we have Sarai, we have Hagar. All right, Hagar's running from Sarai. Okay, and then the next immediate thought was, oh, I so hate this story. I so loathe this story. This story bothers me so much. It makes me angry. It makes me almost disgusted. It makes me just like, what in the world is wrong? Why? Oh, and then I thought, well, wait a minute. Now, before I get so, holy and, think I'm better than anybody else, I'm no better than the people involved in this story. I'm just as messed up as they are. And this just demonstrates that even those who believe in God, even those who are hearing from God directly, even from those who seem to be following God, they can be involved in some pretty messed up stuff, even though Christians don't want to admit that. Now, if you don't know, Hagar is basically the servant, the slave of Abram and Sarai. Hagar is their slave. So now we have slavery. Okay, that's never good. But how they obtain this slave is kind of even more messed up. All right. So if you go back, if you go back to chapter 12, if we start in verse 1, Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee. I will make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother. But the key is God has revealed himself specifically to Abram, giving him specific blessings. We can start referring to this as the Abrahamic covenant. He's giving him these very specific promises. It's not every day that God just reveals himself and tells you these things in a very specific way. In fact, for us, the only time he only speaks to us through his word. But at this time, God spoke in many different ways. But he spoke directly to Abram. Now, he wasn't speaking to everyone, so it was a very special and unique thing. It was a supernatural thing. So he has given specific information. Now, as they look at, if you jump down to Genesis chapter 12, verse 9, Abram, and if you look at verse 8, all right, or look at verse 7, Genesis chapter 12, verse 7, and the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, unto thy seed I will give this land, and there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. God literally appears unto Abram. God is speaking to Abram. God is revealing himself to Abram. I mean, this is not just like Abram's got a Bible and he's trying to figure it out. God is literally appearing. God is speaking to him in a supernatural way. You talk about, supposedly increasing your faith, giving you something tangible to hold on to. So he appears and he says those things to him. And then go back to Genesis chapter 12. And then look what happens. Verse 9. And Abram journeyed going on still toward the south. And there was a famine in the land. And Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. All right, so God has revealed himself. God has spoken to him. God has made all of these promises. And then Abram finds himself facing a difficult circumstance. There is a famine in the land. So what does he do? He takes a turn and he goes to Egypt. Now, what happens when he goes down to Egypt? And it came to pass, verse 11, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. Hey, now look here. Now I know God has revealed himself. I know God has spoken. I know God has given us these great promises, but hey, look, here's the deal. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You're amazing. And when we go down, they're gonna take you from me and they may kill me. So hey, we got to find a way to make sure I stay alive. So you don't tell them you're my wife. They'll take you. Sorry about that, but I'll get to live. So they come up with the plan, right? And he says, my soul shall live because of thee. My soul's going to live because, I guess of your great sacrifice. You're going to be taken from me. You may end up somebody else's wife, but hey, I get to live. All right. So, I mean, the whole thing just seems kind of messed up. I think we can agree there, right? And it came to pass that when Abram was coming to Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, and she was very fair. And the princess also of Pharaoh saw her and commanded her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep, oxen, and asses, and men servants, and maid servants, and she asses, and camels. He's getting servants. See, this is where Hagar, they get Hagar in the midst of this situation where Abram they have lied. They have deceived Pharaoh for Abram's own safety, for his own security. And what does he get from it? He's given slaves. He's actually benefiting from his lie. He's benefiting from his deceit. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh. What is that? Wait, whoa. Hey, God, why are you plaguing Pharaoh? Pharaoh's not the one who's doing anything wrong. It's Abram and Sarai who's doing anything wrong. They should be plagued. But God will have mercy in whom he will have mercy, and he will judge whom he will judge. This is God's sovereignty. This is God deciding to show mercy and grace to Abram and not showing that mercy and grace to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh is plagued, right? And so the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou she is my sister? So I might have taken her to me to wife. Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go thy way. So Pharaoh quickly figures out, hey, Abram, you lied to me. Now, I'm the one being punished, but it was your lie. You set me up. So, look what happens. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. And now look, and Abram went, chapter 13, verse 1, Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him. And look at verse 2. And Abram was very rich. He lies, he deceives, he puts someone else's life at risk, and Abram comes out rich. And not only does he come out rich, he comes out with a maidservant. Well, they keep waiting for God to fulfill, these promises. They keep waiting. Hey, God's going to do this. He's going to raise a nation out of me. Okay. All right. Great. He keeps waiting. Well, these people who believe in God, God has revealed himself. God has spoken to them. Well, God's not acting in a way that they want to. So what happens? Chapter 16. Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. Oh, there she is. There. I wonder where this Egyptian servant came from. Oh, it came from Egypt. I wonder how they picked up a slave in Egypt. Oh, yeah, because of Abram's deceit. The whole story is messed up. Now, she's a servant. She's a slave. She doesn't have any say-so in what's about to happen. She's the one who's about to be used and abused, this whole situation. And it's God's people. It's the people whom God has revealed himself, the people whom God has spoken to, who are deceiving and now about to abuse a woman. They're the ones who are not the heroes in this story, even though the church always wants to turn them into the hero. They're the ones who are messed up, which demonstrates that people who believe in God, whom God has revealed himself to, can be very messed up. Because we are saved by grace. We're not saved by what we do or don't do. But it doesn't excuse when we do these horrible things. And look what happens. And Sarai said unto Abram, behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee. Now she even knows God has restrained. Hey, God has not given us a child. All right. So since God, even though God has promised a child, he's restrained us for giving a child. So even though God is the one doing the restraining, instead of waiting for God to remove the restraint, we're going to take matters into our own hand. But please note, she talks to Abram, and then look what she says. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. Guess who's discussing this? Abram and Sarai. Who doesn't even get consulted with in any way, shape, or form? The maid, the slave. She has no ability to offer consent here. She's just going to be used. In fact, I think it would be very fair to say that I think by any, at least modern day understanding, this is full-blown rape. This story is so messed up. The godly people are deceiving and now using a woman and completely say, hey, God's not doing what he said he's going to do. We're going to take care of it. And so what happens? And Sarai, he hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife. All right, so now we're going to have a little bit of polygamy going on, right? We're going to have multiple wives. Not only that, Hagar doesn't have she has no say-so in this. She has no way to do anything. She can't do anything except obey what they say, unless, I guess, who knows what would have happened. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. Now Hagar she's just doing what she's told. And the next thing she knows, Sarai is furious. Sarai is like, she despises Hagar. Why are you mad at Hagar? Be mad at God for restraining you from having a child. Be mad at yourself for coming up with this plan. Be mad at your husband for listening to you if you want to do so. But don't be mad at Hagar. She hasn't done anything except being used. The whole story just bothers me to no end. And I know when preachers preach it, we always try to give the Disney version of this. We try to clean it up. We try to sanitize it because the story goes against everything evangelical Christianity wants. Evangelical Christianity is simply nothing more than morality. It's moralism. And it's all about believe in God so you'll be better than other people. No. You can believe in God and be pretty messed up people. The Bible is full of examples of that. Because we are not saved by an infused righteousness, but by an imputed righteousness. We're saved by the goodness, the holiness, the perfection of God in Christ Jesus, who obeyed the law for us. Here's an example. These are God's people. He has spoken. He has revealed himself. He has guided them. And they're out there going just like, okay, oh, wait. We have to lie and deceive. Oops, sorry, Pharaoh. Sorry you got plagued. All right. Thanks for all the good stuff. Now we're out of here. All right. So, and then, well, wait a minute. God said he's going to do this. Well, God, let's come up with a plan. I know what we'll do. We'll use our slave. So the slave gets used. And then the next thing you know, Sarai despises her. You should be despising yourself for not trusting in the God who has spoken to you and revealed himself to your husband. Your husband should have spoken up and go, whoa, wait a minute. And he could have even been very blunt and honest. Hey, I got no problem doing this if I'm being honest with you from a fleshly perspective, because I get to engage in a physical relationship with another woman, but I don't think this is the way we're supposed to do this. But no, he just immediately listens to his wife. Okay, and then the wife is upset. I mean, there's nothing godly about this. You talk about good Christian family values. This is the most messed up family you can imagine. So then what happens? And Sarai said unto Abram, my wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid unto thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between me and thee. Hang on. Let me look at verse 4 again. I may have, give me a second. I'm going to look at this in a different translation. 16:4. He slept with Hagar. She became pregnant. When she saw that she was pregnant, her mistress became contemptible to her. So maybe Hagar despising Sarai. I think I was kind of blaming Sarai there, but she's the one who came up with the plan. So now, but she is going to treat Hagar in a very bad way. So I think there's maybe despising going on from both parties here. But Hagar, I could understand why Hagar may be despising someone. She didn't ask for any of this. But if you look at the next verse, verse 5, and Sarah said to Abraham, my wrong be upon thee. Why would my wrong be upon thee? Okay, right. I have given my maid unto thy bosom, and when she saw she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judged between me and thee. So Hagar does despise Sarai, and you can understand why. Sarai seems somewhat bothered by the situation, and we're going to see her actions as well. I'm kind of reading what we're going to see into the text before it's actually mentioned, okay? But I think there's despising going on both sides. I really do. Let's read the next verse and we'll see if I'm right here, right? But Abraham said unto Sarai, behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. Now, wait a minute. So then Abraham's whole approach to this is like, whoa, ladies. Nobody, I'm not involved. Sarai's upset. Hagar is upset. And Abram's like, hey, Sarah, you do whatever you want. And what does she do? Look at verse 6 again. But Abram said unto Sarai, behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. Now, if I look at it from a different translation, I had to bend down to get it. Here is your slave. Your slave is in your hands. Do whatever you want with her. Then Sarai mistreated her so that she ran away from her. So, and actual, if we're going to be very actual and factual here, the first time we kind of hear a version of flee, it's actually in verse 6. She fled from her face. The first fleeing here, the first time we read of someone fleeing, the first time we read of someone who has fled, they are fleeing, they fled because they were being mistreated. They were being mistreated, and they were being mistreated by supposedly the godly people, the heroes of the faith. And Abraham's whole way of handling it is like, hey, honey, she's in your hand. You do whatever you want. I'm not going to defend her. I'm not going to take up for her. If you want to mistreat her. Here's God's people mistreating a woman who they are using and abusing. And yes, I may have misspoke a little bit there and kind of jumped the gun, but I think Hagar despises Sarai, and I think clearly Sarai despises Hagar. I think that's fair. I think it's a fair and accurate statement. I don't think I'm reading anything into the text. She gets mad and she basically blames Abram, and then Abram's like, whoa. Your slave, do whatever you want. Well, wait. She's your wife now. Hagar's your wife now. Abram, right? Oh, doesn't matter. I just need peace. I need peace in the house. So, hey, you do whatever you want. And then she mistreats her so bad. She fled. She ran away. Oh, the whole story is messed up. But let's continue reading it. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. She fled. There's the fleeing, fled, whichever tense you want. And then, so Let's just do this. Let's do this. This fleeing. I want us to think about this. All right? I think this is very important. The whole story is disturbing. The whole story bothers me greatly. But this first example of someone fleeing, this first example of someone who had fled, the first example of the word flee is this very horrible situation where you have someone fleeing because they have been mistreated and they want to get away from it. They are fleeing because of how they're being treated. They are fleeing because how they feel. They're fleeing because of what's happening to them. Some external source is coming upon them and they don't like how it feels. They don't like how they're being treated. They may be, who knows? Who knows how bad she was mistreating Hagar? We don't know. But obviously bad enough that Hagar was like, I've got to get out of here. I've got to run. I mean, it had to be pretty bad. Where is Hagar going to go? She's pregnant. Where's she going to go? Abram's not going with her, so she's going to go alone with child at that period of time in history? She had to be mistreated really bad. Maybe she even feared for her life, but whatever the case was, she had to get away. She fled. So when we start thinking about this concept of fleeing, there are times that we may flee. We may decide to run. We may decide to get away because a situation isn't very good. It is bad. It is unpleasant. It is horrible. And our initial thought may be, I got to get out of this. I got to get away from this. I've got to get away. And that's what you may attempt to do. But look, this text. Look what happens in the next part. And he said, so he says to Hagar, this is the angel of the Lord. He appears and he says, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence comest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. She doesn't say necessarily where she's going. She's just saying, I had to get away from Sarai. Now look what the angel says, verse 9. This is the most disturbing part of this. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to thy mistress and submit thyself under her hands. What in the world? The angel of the Lord tells her to go back? You fled, but go back? I don't know what I do with this spiritually. I don't know what I do with this theologically. I mean, this demonstrates clearly sometimes God calls us to submit in a situation that may not be very pleasant, may not be very good. And we see this in the Bible where we're called to submit ourselves to leaders. Now, I know it's been a major move in the evangelical world. No. We only submit to godly people. We don't submit to the ungodly. But a Roman seems to say you submit, and it clearly knew the type of government that was in place when Paul is telling them to submit. You say, well, the Bible says in the book of Acts, who should we obey, God or man? Well, in that particular case, they were not disobeying civil government. They were disobeying the rules of the religious leaders who forbade them to speak and preach in the name of Jesus, which is always often overlooked when people quote that text. But this is the idea that at least if we want to try to break this down from an application standpoint, that there are times that we may flee, we may try to run because we don't like the situation, and it may not be what God calls us to do. God sometimes doesn't just say, hey, you don't like the situation? Just run. Sometimes you have to stay in a situation you don't like because that's what God calls you to do. Now, when I say what God calls you to do, I'm not saying you listen to some inner voice. I'm saying, what would Scripture tell you to do in the situation? Now, what happens here? Okay, so, and the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her, thou God seest me, for she said, have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well, and then it names the name of the well here, gives some information. Look at verse 15. Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called the son's name which Hagar bare Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. All right? And so we see the situation. Now, if we can find what happens here. So then their names are going to be changed here to Abraham and to Sarah. So their names are going to be changed here. And then let's see here. How far do we want to skip ahead? All right. So we have Ishmael. He's being circumcised. Okay. Yeah, I think there was going to be maybe a little bit more we were going to look at, but you get the basic idea of the story. Especially in the context where the word fled and flee is used. It's in chapter 16. Hagar fled from Sarai. In fact, I think it's fair to say she fled from Sarai and Abram, because he wasn't doing anything to help. He didn't do anything to protect. He just said, hey, Sarah, do whatever you want. And she so mistreated her that even in her condition, she ran for her life. Now, maybe Hagar was despising Sarah, and clearly Sarai was despising her. Clearly, there was everyone despising because of everything that occurred. But let's make it very clear. The whole situation went down. The whole situation went down because of the godly family, the heroes of the faith, starting with lies and deception when they go down to Egypt. They come out with slaves, and then they take those slaves, and then when that God tells them what he's going to do for them, instead of believing and trusting in God, Sarai comes up with the great plan. Hey, God has stopped me from doing this, but we're going to come up with an alternative plan. We're going to come up with a plan B. They come up with a plan B where they use their slave, and then the slave actually conceives, and then the slave dismayed. And you can see why maybe she despises Sarai, right? Look, wait a minute. I'm now in this situation. I now have to bear this man's child. She may despise Sarai because she's just been used. And Sarai's clearly not happy about the situation. She almost wants to blame everyone else. No, Sarai, you should blame yourself. It's your fault. Everything I said in regards to Sarai is true, even though I kind of put the despising in Sarai to Hagar. It's really Hagar despising Sarai. But everything around it shows that Sarai is despising Hagar as well. I think they're both despising each other. I think I'm being fair. If you don't think I'm being fair, by all means, you can correct me. But when it comes to the fleeing, What do I do with this one? I mean, this is one of 101, right? What do I do with the first one? Well, it just makes me think there's probably times I've wanted to flee. I would have fled, but maybe God would be like, no. Go back and submit. Go back and submit. Now, God could have said, no, keep running, keep going, and I'll take care of you. I will provide for you. I will look after you. Go here, go here, go here. I'll provide food this way. He provided food and protection and everything that they need to sustain Israel for wandering around in the wilderness for 40 years. He could have sustained Hagar and Ishmael for the rest of their lives. But no. He tells them to go back. So there are times we will feel like fleeing when we need to stay and submit. There's going to be times and situations we want to flee them, but God says stay and submit. Now, I am no way, shape, or form utilizing this in any way, shape, or form to speak of a woman being abused and telling to stay and continue to be abused. No, you need to get out of the abuse. You need to contact authorities. There needs to be legal action taken, and you need to be protected. All right? We're not even here to get into the divorce question. You have every right to do that. But I'm saying, I'm not speaking in that situation. I'm speaking in a generic situation, right? Just whatever life throws at you, sometimes we want to flee it. We want to run from it, but sometimes God is not, no, don't go, but he tells you to stay. See, sometimes it's stay, not flee. There are times you're told to flee. There are other times where fleeing is not what God wants, because in this case, she fled and the angel of the Lord says, go back and submit. So whenever you find yourself in a situation, you have to ask, what would the Bible call me to do here? Not looking for some still small voice to tell you, because your own feelings, because many times your feelings will say run, your feelings will say go, your feelings will say get out. But the word of God may say no. You are to stay. You are to submit, because here's one thing you'll figure out quickly if you read the Bible. God doesn't care about our feelings, our emotions when it comes to what he wants done. He never says, well, if you feel this, go do this. No, it's not follow your feelings, follow your heart. No, it's like obey me. And there's no way to sanitize this story. It was God's people. Abram and Sarai, whom God has revealed himself to Abraham, spoken to Abraham, who are doing these absolutely horrific things. Meaning that, well, we're no better than them. We're just as messed up as them. They were no better than us. I can understand why Hagar despised Sarah. I can understand. Because she took her. She's the one. Sarai was the one controlling this. Sarai was the one who planned it, controlled it, and made it happen. She was the one who took Hagar and said, here you go. You now belong to my husband, Abram. And then she conceived, and she despised Sarai. So I'm going to make sure I make that correct. I read that incorrectly the first time, and I do apologize for that. Trust me, I'm going to be mad at myself all day for that, because I've read the story 900 times, but my brain was already 3 or 4 verses ahead, because I know how Sarai treats Hagar. I knew that where the this is where the flee verse got me. I was so preoccupied with that I'm just already like, hey, Hagar runs away. She flees from Sarai because she's being mistreated. Clearly, Sarai despises her. Okay, but the bottom line is they're both despising each other. But you can understand Hagar despising. Why is Sarai upset? Why is she mad? Is it because it goes after her ego? I couldn't conceive, but, well, this woman could. Is it because, well, I couldn't conceive, but my husband could conceive with this woman? Does she feel threatened by this woman? That her husband may like this other woman more? Is it selfishness? Is it pride? Is it ego? Is it jealousy? The first fled. So just if you're writing these down, and I didn't even notice it the first time because I was so focused on the word flee, but you'll notice the first time, it's the first use in going with this tense. Verse 6, but Abram said unto Sarai, behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. So there's the first real use. That's Genesis 16:6. And then the second is in 8. And this is the one I was so focused on. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarah. And I knew immediately, I know why she's fleeing, because Sarah is, well, treating her in a horrible, horrible way. So what do you do with the first fled and the first flee that you found in Genesis? What did you do with it? Did you skip it, or did you spend some time with it? Now, I don't have it. It's a historical narrative. So I'm not trying to say it's, we make it immediately prescriptive, but we do have to think about its implications, because I do believe there are plenty of examples in the Bible where someone may be tempted to flee. Someone may be tempted to rise up and do this or that. And God's like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not about your feelings, not about your emotions, not about what you like or dislike. This is what you're going to do. And in this case, Hagar was told to go back and submit. Was told to go back and submit. Well, that's in a historical setting, but it's got to mean something to us. I know Christians just completely lost that concept when it came to we don't have to listen to anyone. We don't have to submit to anyone. We can do what we want. Hey, you're going to tell me to do this? I'm going to flee. I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to do what I want. No. Sometimes that's not what we're called to do. What did you do with it? Did you skip it like I got ready to skip it? Did you misread it like I misread it briefly? Okay. I'm glad I caught myself where I probably already have emails. What are you doing? The despising there is Hagar despising Sarai, and you're blaming Sarai. I am, but it's obvious in the text Sarai despises her as well. So I should have just used it as a mutual despising. So what do you think? I'd love to get your thoughts. You can email them to me, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. Now, for the Sermons 2.0 app challenge, remember, you're looking for sermons about fleeing, fled, right? Or you're supposed to also be looking up all of the verses, 100 verses minimum, where the word flee is used, and put them in categories. But just for example, you can, if you would like, now look up a random sermon on Genesis chapter 16, say verses 4 through 9, Genesis 16, or 1 through 9, Genesis 16, 1 through 9, and see how they deal with Hagar's fleeing and the angel of the Lord telling her to go back and to submit. See how they handle all of that. They'll probably do a better job than I did and not have me blame Sarai for despising Hagar when the text is saying Hagar despised Sarah. But I believe the text itself will show they both were despising one another. I do believe that's accurate. Now, if you don't believe I was accurate, by all means, email me and, tell me. And I've got no problem, recording another episode and correcting myself. But I think that's fair. Now, a lot of people like to play this down, go, well, you can't really blame Abram and Sarai here. And who knows, Hagar may have really, really wanted this and I just like, ooh, there's nothing in the text that has Hagar. She's not even being consulted. She has no agency in this at all. She has no ability to offer consent. She has no ownership here. She's owned. She has no ownership even of her own body. But there's the first fled and the first flee. I was focused on the flee. Almost forgot the fled was there. In fact, I think I did until I read it this time. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's right there. I just went because I did the Blue Letter Bible app and went to the first flee and did not bother to look at the other 10. So, all right. There we go. Impromptu, trying to work it out in real time. Sometimes it's not as polished as I would like it to be, but that's okay. That's what this is supposed to be, right? I told you, right? I don't know. I may have said it in the pre-show. I don't know if I said it at the beginning of this episode. But yeah, this is one of those situations where I didn't have it all worked out yet, but I wanted to present at least my initial thoughts. And well, there you have it. My original intent, right, when I went live was not to necessarily go back through the whole story. It was more just saying, okay, hey, Hagar, and just kind of basically summarizing it, and then just talk about the fleeing and the fled, or the fleeing. I don't even know if I would have gone back to the verse where it fled was. That was my original idea. It was going to be simple, about 15, 20 minutes. And then just kind of go, hey, what did you guys do with this one? And not really do much. And then next thing you know, I'm going back all the way to Genesis 12. And then I'm reading all of Genesis 16. And well, you see what happened. But I corrected it. There you go. All right. Can't wait to see what you came up with. newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful day. And please participate in the Sermons 2.0 app challenge. Participate in this kind of like Bible study exercise on the word flee. And we've got all week to work on it. 100 verses. Work on those. Start listening to sermons using the word fled, flee, fleeing, and looking at the verses and finding sermons maybe on the verses that uses the word fled, fleeing, whatever tense it may be found. Thanks for listening. God bless.